Okay, remember that they're changing my voice? They're fuming me so much they've even slightly changed my appearance. In some ways more than slightly, but you can still tell by my physique, you can still tell by certain things that I'm the top martial artist. But they've tried to make it so I seem gay using technology. If you look at Bibi Netanyahu and other famous celebrities in recent years, they've all seemed to have transformed in a similar way to having a similar sort of gay way about them. Okay, the red lips are still common, what have you. And they've done something like that to me as well. I mean, look at Jet Li, Bibi Netanyahu, a few that come to mind. It's very clear. And of course, I don't appreciate it. And God is very much against people that think that it's a good idea to try to make it so I look gay. Okay, also, it's important to note that if they keep it up, I'm going to have to make a video series about my objections to the gay agenda. So we'll see how this video goes. I think they're going to sabotage me, and I'm going to have to talk about that, and I'm going to have to talk about the white and Jewish supremacists more, in a way that's more harsh than I usually do, to teach them a lesson about interfering with God's work and trying to make it seem like I'm magically white or Jewish or gay, and that's outrageous. So Matthew 13, the parable of the sower. That same day Jesus went out of the house and sat by the lake. Such large crowds gathered around him that he got into a boat and sat in it, while all the people stood on the shore. Then he told them many things in parables, saying, a farmer went out to sow his seed. He was scattering the seed. Some fell along the path, and the birds came and ate it up. Some fell on rocky places where it did not have much soil. It sprang up quickly because the soil was shallow. But when the sun came up, the plants were scorched, and they withered because they had no root. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up and choked the plants. Still other seed fell on good soil, where it produced a crop 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Whoever has ears, let them hear. The disciples came to him and asked, why do you speak to the people in parables? He replied, because the knowledge of the secrets of the kingdom of heaven has been given to you, but not to them. Whoever has will be given more, and they will have an abundance. Whoever does not have, even what they have will be taken from them. This is why I speak to them in parables. Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing, they do not hear or understand. In them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes because they see, and your ears because they hear. For truly I tell you, many prophets and righteous people long to see what you see, but did not see it, and to hear what you hear, but did not hear it. Now again, I silenced a lot of people from churches and from various movements when they were asking me, they said, if you're Jesus, how come every eye did not see you come? He goes back to Isaiah, which is also quoted in Matthew 13. It's overkilled, this part, right? And also Hebrews, where it says, without holiness, no one will see the Lord. Because their eyes don't see. Every eye that will see, they can see. Every eye that's holy will see. Every ear that is holy will hear the truth and know that I'm Christ and rally to me. You know them by their walk and their works. And their walk is part of their works. They didn't rally to me, so they're not of God. My sheep hear my action-based voice, and they respond. The wicked stay in rebellion because they're clinging to the world, and they refuse to accept the truth. And when the devil tries to trick them and does things like change the way I look slightly, or fume and poison me, they just give up, or they magically stop believing. Because they were never really God's. They were never really mine. They were of the devil the whole time. Listen to what the parable of the sower means. When anyone hears the message about the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in their heart. This is the seed sown along the path. The seed falling on rocky ground refers to someone who hears the word and at once receives it with joy. But since they have no root, they last only a short time. When trouble or persecution comes because of the word, they quickly fall away. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word, making it unfruitful. Let's stop there. So the first 3 examples they're using, right? Okay. The seed that's sown along the path doesn't make it, right? Because the evil one comes and snatches away what was sown in someone's heart because they don't understand. So the first problem is they don't understand. The second problem is they don't have root. So when trouble or persecution comes because of the word, which is the spirit, the warrior spirit of God, they fall away. Now think about the root and offspring of David, right? David, a warrior king. David versus Goliath. David versus the Philistines. David versus the Jebusites in 2 Samuel 5. So you see, it's a martial art religion in terms of standing firm for what's right, monotheistic. The seed falling among the thorns refers to someone who hears the word, but the worries of this life and the deceitfulness of wealth choke the word. So if you don't understand it, whether or not you receive it with joy, it's not going to help you. If you don't have root and you can't stand firm, Matthew 10:22, right? Stand firm to be saved. When trouble or persecution comes, you'll fall off. It says they quickly fall away. And if you let the worries of life and the deceitfulness of wealth, of life in this world, that is being here on this world, okay, if you let that get to you, you won't be fruitful. And every branch that doesn't bear fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. And it says, but the seed falling on good soil refers to someone who hears the word and understands it. This is the one who produces a crop yielding 100, 60, or 30 times what was sown. Now there's all kinds of connections here, right? You get the 6 and the 30, right? Which connects to 666, believe it or not, right? Okay. And again, so we get the 100 times 60 times 30, and you do the numbers there for those of you who are numbers people, occultists or whatever, Masonic numbers people. Numbers is a book in the Bible. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm not. But for those of you who are, and you want to connect it to later verses, verse 33, right? The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed it into about 60 pounds of flour until it worked all the way through the dough. Okay? You want to connect it to 666. There's a connection there. The obvious connections are that you have to receive the word and understand it and have root and stand firm in it. And stand firm like the most brave martial artist that ever lived, so to speak. Okay? And that is the teaching. The yeast of the Pharisees, for example, is the teaching of the Pharisees. The yeast of God is, and Christ and me, is the teaching of God. Okay? Bearing fruit. Right? Consuming the fruit of righteousness, bearing the fruit of righteousness, sowing the fruit of righteousness, the seed of righteousness on good ground. Then you connect it to the mark of the beast, which is the definition of righteousness, getting it correct, morally precise righteousness versus the beast definition, which is, the beast marking its territory. It's just trying to survive. It's trying to eat. It likes to reproduce. It has no higher cause, no direction. It doesn't have a morally precise direction. The beast doesn't walk in the way of righteousness along the path of justice. Okay, they accept the boundaries of wickedness instead of the boundaries that are given to you in Isaiah 28:17, which is righteousness and justice as the measuring line and plume line. And we see elsewhere in Isaiah where it says that chaos and desolation. That's what happens to people who accept the mark of the beast. They're in the boundaries of chaos and desolation as a result of not being morally precise. The parable of the weeds. Jesus told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a man who sowed good seed in his field. But while everyone was sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. When the wheat sprouted and formed heads, then the weeds also appeared. The owner's servants came to him and said, "Sir, didn't you sow good seed in your field? Where then did the weeds come from?" "An enemy did this," he replied. The servants asked him, "Do you want us to go and pull them all up?" "No," he answered, "because while you are pulling the weeds, you may uproot the wheat with them. Let them both grow together until the harvest. At that time, I will tell the harvesters, first collect the weeds and tie them in bundles to be burned, then gather the wheat and bring it to the barn So what it's saying here is very similar to the sheep and the goats, right? The tares and the wheat, right? The weeds and the wheat. The good fish, the parable of the net, the good fish and the bad fish. There's a separation based on their deeds, right? Going back to the parable of the sower, right? The parable of the weeds is after the parable of the sower in Matthew 13, which tells us that you need to understand, you need to have roots, you need to stand firm. Okay? Don't be moved by trouble or persecution or the worries of this life or the deceitfulness of wealth. You need to understand and live the fact that righteousness is greater than wealth. And so then comes the parable of the weeds, where they say, yes, there's people who are wolves in sheep's clothes. Yes, there's wicked people here, and that's part of the test. And the reason why they're still here has to do with what will happen to the wheat if you remove them, because as it says in Proverbs, as iron sharpens iron, one person sharpens another. They're part of the obstacle course, the test. There's a bunch of traps and snares that you need to masterfully avoid by being sober and vigilant and standing firm and using wisdom and insight and sense and so on and so forth. I'm being fumed heavily, and when I have my windows up, I get some kind of frequency noise in my ears. So let me just shoot through this next part, and we'll take a break here, and I'll do it in one more clip or so. Okay. The parables of the mustard seed and the yeast. He told them another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like a mustard seed which a man took and planted in his field. Though it is the smallest of all seeds, yet when it grows, it is the largest of garden plants and becomes a tree, so that the birds come and perch on its branches. Okay, this is key here, because later on when Christ says that if you have the faith, it's also Matthew, you have faith of a mustard seed, that you can tell a mountain to be, you can move a mountain, right? That with that faith as small as a mustard seed, it alludes to Revelation in Jeremiah, right? Babylon, the destroying mountain that's thrown into the sea in Revelation. Okay, so it's saying that if you're like a mustard seed and you stay the course despite things that might dishearten you, the worries of life, what have you, okay, and you insist you come into the Spirit of God, you'll be part of that process of casting Babylon down and trampling it. And a lot of people misinterpret that. That's part of why I don't like the Bible. Just because I have solved all the most important parts of the Bible doesn't mean that I appreciate the underhanded and depraved tactic that the authors are using in order to control reproduction. As a result, on a planet of almost 8 billion people, I'm shunned, including by the congregations of churches, as they try to get gays to catfish me and unattractive females to take advantage of me, and they mess up my brain and change my look and mock me. And that was part of the formula that the Bible is part of, that is designed to cheat the righteous and screen them out. The reason why Isaiah 57 came to pass, the righteous being taken away. Okay, because they never, house divided cannot stand, and they use the Bible to confuse and divide them. And there's all these denominations and all these interpretations and all these translations and all these idiots running around, throwing their weight around and trying to silence people like me. It's a sick, 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 sick world. It's a sick mess. Okay. So where were we here? Okay, he told them still another parable. The kingdom of heaven is like yeast that a woman took and mixed into about 60 pounds of flour until it worked all through the dough. Jesus spoke all these things to the crowd in parables. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. Again, the bread stands for the presence of a people. It can be the bread of affliction, the bread of the righteous, bread of life, which is the bread of the righteous. The yeast can be the teaching of God, the teaching of Christ, versus the yeast of the Pharisees, which he told them to beware of. Okay. In a different part of the Bible. In Matthew, nonetheless, though. Okay, Jesus spoke all these things to the crowd in parables. He did not say anything to them without using a parable. So was fulfilled what was spoken through the prophet. I will open my mouth in parables. I will utter things hidden since the creation of the world. Again, this is a kind of mystery school, like Melchizedek approach to this, and I do not respect it. I do not honor it. I disagree with Scripture on this issue. People need to be raised correctly and immediately the first time so everyone can see the truth and come into reality and make a sound decision on behalf of themselves and their families, decisions in regard to dating and career and so on and so forth. Instead, they're confused, and the school system and the fumes and the poisons and the air and the water and the food, it just throws them way off, and they just get abused. And here I am in the end, and I don't appreciate their scale. I commanded them to stop, and they refuse to, and they keep following the despicable footsteps of their forefathers, including the people who almost certainly wrote the Bible. People who have sown weeds with the wheat, if you will. The parable of the weeds explained. Then he left the crowd and went into the house. His disciples came to him and said, "Explain to us the parable of the weeds in the field." He answered, "The one who sowed the good seeds is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seeds stand for the people of the kingdom. The weeds are the people of the evil one, and the enemy who sows them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the age, or the end of the world, and the harvesters are angels. As the weeds are pulled up and burned in the fire, so it will be at the end of the age, or the end of the world," right? The end of the world as you know it, as the world shifts over, hopelessly into the realm of the dead. "The Son of Man will send out his angels, and they will weed out of his kingdom everything that causes sin and all who do evil." And that part is key here. Matthew 13, verse 41 is key. They will throw them into the blazing furnace. Remember, Zion is said to be the fire, and Jerusalem is the furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. Like the sun and not like the moon. The path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter till the full light of day. Malachi, the sun in righteousness. Psalm 19, the sun, the symbol of the bridegroom, the champion, me. Whoever has ears, let them hear. Now again, part of why I read the Bible has to do with the fact that there's some good stuff in there, right? And some of my favorite parables are the parable of the hidden treasure and the parable of the pearl, and they happen to be the ones that are next. So going down to verse 44, right, it's the next part. "The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. When a man found it, he hid it again, and then in his joy, went and sold all he had and bought that field." Again, what did he do when he found the treasure? He hid it again, and then was full of joy and sold all he had. The things of this world seemed worthless to him compared to the treasure of righteousness, the treasure of being with Christ and in God. Okay, that's key here. This is part of the betrayal of the world, right? Matthew 6, right? "Store riches for yourself in heaven, where evil people don't break in and steal in one sense or another." Again, the kingdom of heaven is like a merchant looking for fine pearls. When he found one of great value, he went and sold everything he had and bought it. Now this is key here because it also connects to Proverbs, right? "A wife of noble character, who can find? She's worth far more than pearls." Now, the wife of noble character is the fine pearl, the treasure in heaven. And I'm not referring to a woman, but yes, the spirit of Jerusalem with God, so to speak, Jerusalem in heaven, not on earth, can be in a woman. And that's the type of woman that I was looking for in both senses. I seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, I found it. Okay, and I've spent lots of money renting cars, being persecuted, missing out on money, helping people, what have you, overkilling my right to sit at God's right hand. But even if I didn't, I still would get rid of everything I had if that's what it took to be with God, to have the wisdom and the righteousness and the martial art principles besides wisdom and righteousness, justice, timing, heart, discipline, and so on and so forth, right? Perseverance. So then we get to the parable of the net. There's two types of fish, right? One are those who get what I just said. That's why the parable of the net is after the parables of the hidden treasure and pearl. And we started with the chapter with the parable of the sower. Okay, the parable of the weeds, the mustard seed, what have you. It's now the parable of the net. Once again, the kingdom of heaven is like a net that was let down into the lake and caught all kinds of fish, right? The water of the peoples, the nations, the multitudes, the languages. When it was full, the fishermen pulled it up on the shore. Then they sat down and collected the good fish in baskets, but threw the bad away. Again, Horace, the great fisherman, Jesus saying, make you a fisher of men, what have you. This is connected. Right? The true form of the Son of God depends on the principle, not the title. You call it, Yeshua, Christ, Horace. All these things are just silly words compared to the idea, right? Who cares what the language is? Who cares what the sound is, the human language? What matters is the language of God, what you're actually pointing to, and if you're effectively pointing to it, or you're trying to deceive people, or what have you, or you're superimposing things on it, like the false image of Christ, with the spirit that's evil that's represented, that kind of childish Babylon spirit that we see depicted so often. No offense to the LGBT community. Again, I hope that you see that I'm right, but it is an LGBT spirit that is the most commonly depicted kind of spirit and grouping of spirits that we see in the false images of Christ. It's kind of that occult, governing class, LGBT spirit that also abuses the LGBT community in the next week. And some of them are quite friendly. Some of these gay people, some of these lesbians, it's like they want to be your friend, but they're being abused by that spirit into next week. I know there's people who don't appreciate me saying that way, and there's some people, including LGBT people, I'm sure, that would appreciate me saying it that way. Okay. When it was full, the fishermen pulled it up on the shore. Then they sat down and collected the good fish in baskets, but threw the bad away. This is how it will be at the end of the age. The angels will come and separate the wicked from the righteous and throw them into the blazing furnace, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Now stop right there. Elsewhere in the Bible it says, unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. In Luke it says, unless you repent, you too shall perish. So you have to repent and be righteous. You have to bear fruit. So it's saying that the righteous will be separated from the wicked, and many of the wicked, like the demons, believe in God. They just didn't scramble to do what's right. They didn't bear fruit. They didn't have the deeds. They didn't come into the light and be a lamp on a stand in the formation with me, yoking themselves to me instead of the wicked. They didn't glorify God with their good deeds, which is in Matthew 5, where it says to be a light, the light of the world, to be a lamp on the stand, to be in the Spirit of God in the divine order, and to have righteous deeds to glorify God. That's a command. Arguably, that's the greatest commandment, because you love God by obeying His commands, which in essence is having righteous deeds in the divine order, in complete submission and obedience to God. The one who loves me, the one who loves God, obeys God's commands. Have you understood all these things? Jesus asked. Yes, they replied. He said to them, therefore, every teacher of the law who has become a disciple in the kingdom of heaven is like the owner of a house who brings out of his storeroom new treasures as well as old. A prophet without honor. When Jesus had finished these parables, he moved on from there. Coming to his hometown, he began teaching the people in their synagogue, and they were amazed. Where did this man get this wisdom and these miraculous powers? Right? Remember, the kingdom of heaven is not a matter of talk, but of power. They asked, isn't this the carpenter's son? Isn't his mother's name Mary? And aren't his brothers James, Joseph, Simon, and Judas? Aren't all his sisters with us? Where then did this man get all these things? And they took offense at him. But Jesus said to them, a prophet is not without honor except in his hometown and in his own home. And he did not do many miracles because of their lack of faith. So some of the people that I grew up with, right, they might say, isn't this the brain surgeon's son? Okay. Isn't his mother a doctor as well? Isn't he somebody who, loved to run around and swim and play basketball? Didn't we know this guy? How could we have known this guy and not know that he's Christ? Because, as it says earlier in the chapter, though seeing they do not see, though hearing they do not hear or understand. in them is fulfilled the prophecy of Isaiah. You will be ever hearing, but never understanding. You will be ever seeing, but never perceiving. For this people's heart has become calloused. They hardly hear with their ears, and they have closed their eyes. Otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts. The Lord weighs the hearts, the motives, and turn, and I would heal them. So for those of you who do not understand my Bible argument still, the Bible is Bible, Biblos, meaning book. The lady of Biblos is Balat, is like a feminized version of Baal, who's the main adversary of God in the Bible. And it says right there in the Bible, for people who have wisdom and insight and sense, who are paying attention, who don't trust people who say, here's a book from God, but try to get to the essence of the conflict in the story and understand the formula they're using and why. Who, what, when, where, how, why. Why did they give you this book? To screen out the righteous, Isaiah 57. Elsewhere in Isaiah, it says that the authors are claiming that things are said in a coded manner so that people don't turn to God and heal them. So they don't understand with their hearts and turn and are healed. It says, otherwise they might see with their eyes, hear with their ears, understand with their hearts, and turn, and I would heal them. And the same book that has been given to the whole world with countless churches everywhere, 380,000 churches in America alone, over 20,000 denominations, has not borne a lot of fruit. It says that narrow is the way to life. And as I heard someone else say, recently on TV or something, he said, if the measure, and I've said the similar things myself, he said, if the measure is the fruit, the measure of the tree is the fruit. And I asked you, what is the fruit of the Bible? What are the fruits of the Bible? The masses of people who refuse to obey God through me, the masses of people who see the scripture but don't see. Though seeing, they do not see. Though hearing the preachers tell half-truths in a way that you could read between the lines and see where they're wrong, they still don't hear or understand. Their hearts are callous and insensitive. Their daughters are either people with low self-esteem, or they're gold diggers, they're social norm fanatics, they're assorted cowards. They have some kind of complex because they didn't raise them with mind, body, soul, and spirit. The Lord is a warrior. What kind? A brute? No. The essence of a warrior, when it comes into human form, is a surgically striking top martial artist who's morally precise in the spirit of God as the King of Kings, the royal African falcon, the hawk, the symbol of wisdom, and Job. That is me. They didn't raise their daughters to be like me or to even like me. Now, there are some females who over time did like me. And they do count to some degree. But as a sum total planet, to the point where I've been shunned, I haven't had a date in 7 or 8 years. In the sum total form, what I said is true. And those females who did date me, they basically, in their own ways, to this day, side with the state. Okay? But some of them are more sincere than others. But you get what I'm saying.